Peace and all good. My name is Brother Jacek Orzechowski, and I'm delighted to welcome you all to Voices of the People webinar series sponsored by Justice, Peace, and Integrity of Creation Office of the Friars, of the Order of Friars Minor. And this is part of our Laudato Si Revolution campaign, a year-long campaign. And today we have a group of presenters from around the world. So it's going to be a little bit of an experience of the Pentecost, God's, the Holy Spirit speaking to us, listening to the signs of the times, the cry of the poor and the cry of our mother sister Earth. And I will, before I ask Russell Testa to present the speakers, I would like to pause and invite you all to join me in a short prayer. O Creator God, you have fashioned each one of us and all creatures and ecosystems with love and wisdom. We thank you for all that is good and beautiful, and for how everything is profoundly interconnected and interdependent. The earth and all its people speak of you, O God. As we unite virtually from across the globe, help us to be mindful of your gentle presence. May your Holy Spirit, a loving mystery in and around us, open our ears to hear the cry of the poor and the clamor of our mother sister Earth. The climate change crisis, the agony of our brothers and sisters around the globe, the destruction of the Earth's ecosystems, these are the contemporary way of the cross. Oh God, give us strength and devotion to stay with the suffering of Christ and not to run away from it. Kindle within us the fire of your loving mercy. Teach us how best to harness its power for a Laudato Si revolution, to help transform our society and rebuild God's house that is falling into ruin. Just as Jesus was able to transform water into wine, help us with your Holy Spirit to transform despair into hope. May we trust in the power of Christ's resurrection and preach the gospel of ecological conversion with bold actions. This we ask through Christ our Lord.
Amen.
Welcome. My name is Russ Testa. I serve as the JPIC animator for the Holy Name Province in the United States. And my pleasure to introduce to you the speakers we have today, but also just to give you a couple of tidbits for this webinar. All of you are on silent mode. There's just too many to have everybody speaking in the background noise. So as you have questions, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see Q&A. You'll write the Q&A question. We'll have some time at the end, hopefully, to get most of your questions. If we don't get them, we'll try to get back to you after that. Our speakers today, as Brother Jacek said, come from all over the world. First, our first speaker will be Father Joe McKay. He is a friar in Brisbane, Australia, and he serves as the JPIC animator for the Province of the Holy Spirit. He is also the JPIC coordinator for the South Asia, Australia, and Oceania Conference. Following Brother Joe will be Junghee Min. Sorry, practiced and I got the name wrong. Junghee lives in South Korea. She has been working for more than 30 years with Buddhist groups and international development organizations. And in 2012, while attending an interreligious dialogue on climate change and biodiversity in Sri Lanka, Junghee began to recognize the urgency of climate and ecological crisis and the significant role that religions can play in actually being part of the solution. Currently, she works for Interreligious Climate and Ecology Network. This is a Pan-Asian network of civic groups, faith-based organizations, alternative education groups. Junghee also serves as the co-chair of the Executive Committee for Korean Climate Emergency Action, which consists of over 190 civic groups. Following Junghee will be Steeven Kezamutima, who is from and lives in, at least at this time, lives in Nairobi, Kenya. Steeven is a human rights champion, peace and climate change consultant, and an accomplished musician. Steeven is the representative for the Laudato Si generation in Africa, and he also serves as the program manager in the Office of Justice, Peace, and Integrity of Creation for the Franciscans in Africa, based in Nairobi, Kenya. He's also started an environmental movement in the Great Lakes region. And in 2019, Steeven organized the biggest global climate strike in Kenya and Tanzania. He holds a degree in clinical and social psychology from Great Lakes University and is completing his studies at the Center of Social Justice and Ethics at the Catholic University of Africa, Eastern Africa in Nairobi. And then who you already saw will also be our final speaker presenter will be Brother Jacek. He is from the Holy Name Province in the East Coast of the United States. He serves as the JPIC Animation Committee for the Order and as a friar working also at Catholic Charities in the Washington, D.C. area. So without further ado, Brother Joe, and if you have, again, to remind you, if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A box and we'll try to answer them towards the end of this time together. Joe.
G'day, I'm Brother Joe. I live in Australia at the moment, and last summer, from November to January, in Australia, we had one of the largest bushfire seasons we've ever seen. An area the size of Ireland, or double the size of Ireland, has been burnt in Australia over the summer. And it created a lot of pressure across the country. So here's a video of my friend, Donna, telling about her experiences.
My name's Donna. I'm talking to you from my place here in the Blue Mountains in Australia, where in November last year we were overcome with bushfire, which was the beginning of what is now being labelled Black Summer, where Australia has suffered a few months of unprecedented bushfires in terms of their scale and ferocity. I remember the night very well. It was terrifying, it was loud, there were flames encircling our place. We're on 9 acres here. We are a contemplative retreat centre, and thankfully for us, the Rural Fire Service was here helping us to battle the fire. We fought the fire for 18 hours. In the end, it burned 80% of our property, including our bushwalks and a lot of our contemplative spaces. But thankfully, we were able to save our structures and our home, but not before your body goes through the trauma of imagining that you've lost everything. And this is the trauma that thousands and thousands of Australians went through last summer. And to be honest, we're not looking forward to the next summer because we just don't know if things are only going to get worse. 46 million acres were burnt in the Black Summer in Australia. About 6,000 buildings were destroyed, more than 3,000 family homes. 46 people were killed at the time and many others afterwards due to their complications due to smoke inhalation. We had smoke covering the continent basically for 2 to 3 months. But one of the most harrowing statistics is that more than 1 billion animals were killed in the fires, animals who just couldn't get away. Koalas, kangaroos, all the animals that live in the bush, in this beautiful bush. And some of those are endangered species and are now on the brink of extinction. And we've certainly appreciated your thoughts and support for Australians during that period. And we continue to ask for your support because Australians are still doing it tough. We've got to deal here with repairing our bush. It's unsafe to walk in now, and our bushwalks are destroyed. It's going to be very costly for us to repair that. But I'm also thinking of so many others who actually lost their home and are still living in tents, living in caravans, and maybe their homes were uninsured, and they're still dealing with this. And of course, the poor and marginalised are disproportionately affected. I guess you could call this very much the human face of climate change, where we felt it, and it was terrifying, and we hope that that doesn't happen again. So we thank you for your work and advocacy on climate change, the work that you do, and urge you to continue as we are on the journey, not just with our own personal lives, trying to live more sustainably, but of course the crucial element of governments and corporations, the fossil fuel industries, that structural systemic level where so much environmental degradation is going on. That's what needs to change at that the root, the structural level. And so we hope during this time of pandemic that we've come to learn that if given a chance to take a breather, then the environment can recover and can renew. And so, but we're still active and continuing on. And I take a lot of encouragement and get a lot of sustenance out of nature itself and nature's resilience and the way that it fills me with awe and wonder, and very much like to try to keep that balance of contemplation and action as St. Francis did in his life. And I take encouragement from Laudato Si, that amazing document where Pope Francis wrote that nature is filled with words of love. And again, I just thank you for your support and your interest, and I'm happy to be walking the journey with you. Pace bene from the Blue Mountains.
Well, brothers and sisters, I grew up very close to where Donna is, and we're very used to fires in Australia. But this last summer, we had fires all over the place. As Jonna mentioned, thousands of people's homes were burnt. People were evacuated from a lot of different places. And I'll put the context of this, show why this occurred. And so if they have the next slide. This picture here of the Australia actually shows what Australia is facing in drought now. That's what's happening now. And we've actually had a little bit of rain, but most of Australia at the moment is in drought. And we've been having droughts since the 1980s. We had a very deep drought, but the last drought from 2000 to 2010, and then from 2016 until now, we've seen a great drying of Australia. And we've seen the winter rains drop by 25 or 15%. And so we're not seeing the water touching the ground. So we see the next slide. And we're also seeing an increase in temperature right across Australia. So if you see, these are the pictures of the average temperature, and it shows as you get the redder signs of the temperature being above normal. And for the last decade, Australia has been increasing in temperature. So we've seen a 1% increase in land temperature and water temperature, and we're seeing heat waves being more frequent, longer, and hotter. So at the next slide. And so this is just showing our increase in the number of heat waves that we're experiencing each year, and they're growing increasingly over the last couple of years. And the next. These are the water temperatures around Australia. The red and the orange areas, they're showing how the temperature around Australia, particularly the lower half of Australia, has been increasing and increasing by over the last decade quite dramatically. We're seeing sort of 10% increases in temperature just in the last 10 years. And so what's happening is the northern part of Australia is getting wetter, but the lower part of Australia, we're seeing it dry out a lot. And so this is causing the place to be hotter and drier. So next picture. So during this last summer, our rivers, one of our major rivers, virtually dried up completely. There were huge fish kills. Many of the towns along there were starting to run out of water. And it was causing a huge problem in terms of just agriculture. And there were some places where they were really thinking about how do we get water to these towns. So the next picture. And of course, there was been huge dust storms out in the western areas where no rain, all the grass has died. So we're seeing huge dust storms, and plus all the farmers. We've actually reduced our stock on the land by about 40–50% in some areas. In some areas, they've just completely given up raising any agriculture. because it's just been too dry. And even now, that still hasn't recovered. The next slide. So all of this means we're hotter, we're drier, and we're increasingly on fire. So here's some of the challenges that we face. The next slide. Sorry. The sign of hope is basically our First Nation people, the Aboriginal people. Basically, we've learned that their land management tools of using fire creatively to make sure that the land is looked after has been very important. Next slide.
Joe, you have about a minute left.
Yes. Our main hope is basically the passion and the vision of young people. We're seeing young people being very much involved in the climate change issues. Next slide. We're seeing civil society come together, the volunteer society come together in the face of crisis. We've seen it for the bushfires, we've seen it for the drought, and hopefully we'll see it for climate change. The next. We also, though unfortunately we're starting to be quite a divided country. We are a big mining country, particularly on coal mines, and this is causing, a lot of dispute between people who want change, but the main issue is people fear change. And it's the miners don't want the climate change to occur, but they're worried about their jobs. So next. And the other issue is that even within the church, we've got some people who still doubt that we've got problems. So we need to show that the church is already acting. We're already working on it, Laudato Si. We need to give models of the parishes and the churches and dioceses that are doing the right thing. And I think that's an important sign of hope, but it's also a challenge for us to show people what can be done. So thank you very much, everyone. That's what the situation in Australia is.
Thank you, Joe, for that tour of Australia. We now turn to Junghee.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, brothers, for inviting me to this meeting. Let me show the video clip first and talk. The video clip was recorded during our visit to Myanmar for climate pilgrimage last year. Our pilgrimage group consists of OFM JPIC Korea, lay Catholics, and lay Buddhists from ICE network. This video is about how local people in central Myanmar feel with climate change and how to respond to it. So let's watch the video.
지금 나이가 38인데 젊었을 때 미얀마의 기후하고 지금 기후하고 많이 변해졌다고. 전에는 겨울이라면 겨울답게 춥고 여름이라면 조금 좀 더위가 있는데 사실 있는데 요새는 더위가 너무 못 느끼게 너무 강하게 하고 또 장마철에서도 비가 와야 할 때 안 오고 좀 시간이 지나야 비가 오니까 땅콩 농사 할 때도 좀 시간 맞게 하기가 좀 어려워서 땅콩도 잘 못하고 많이 기후가 많이 변해졌다. 양 내비고 저 마지막 시간이라고 돼.
장마 마지막 시즌이라고.
마지막 시간인데 한 번은 제대로 콩나무 위에서 비가 와야 하는데 시간이 많이 지나왔다고 돼. 아직 마지막 그거 비가 아직 안 오고.
이 마을에 언제부터 살게 되시는지요?
바로 이 짝단이와 마을에 내 요에그래 아니야, 오늘이. 짝단에서 태어나셨다고. 바로 후다블라우 잡고요. 10세. 이거는 84, 이거는 82살. 그 다리 있는 데에서 자연으로 물이 흘러가고 있는데 젊었을 때 거기 물에서 수영까지도 할 수 있고 계속 물이 나오는데 지금은 그 물로 어디 사라졌는지도 모르고. 젊었을 때 이런 12월 넘으면 너무 추운 날씨가 오고 춥고 있어야 하는데 지금 더위가 아직까지 안 내리고 있다. 여름에 너무도 2배 정도
같은 경우는 예전에 물이 없었단 말이거든요.
네네.
물이 없다가 긴 공사 기간을 끝내고 관정을 파고 물탱크를 설치하고 2.5km 정도 되는 곳에 이제 파이프를 직접 다 마을 주민들이 설치를 했어요. 땅을 파고 파이프를 붓고
네.
2.5km를 끌어와서 주민들 이 마을에 물이 도착하는 순간
네.
그 순간이 가장 뿌듯했고 그때는 이제 주민들도 엄청 기뻐하고 저도 그때는 눈물이 좀 날 정도로
네.
그랬던 적이 그때가 가장 뿌듯한 시기라고 생각합니다.
네.
Okay. Yeah, let me talk about the situation in central Myanmar. The village you have watched in the video clip is in dry zone, the central Myanmar. Myanmar is one of the countries most affected by climate crisis in Southeast Asia and also around the world. I'm sorry. Yeah, please, next slide. Especially local communities of dry zone in central Myanmar are suffering from rising temperature, long-lasting and severe drought, and also desertification due to climate change and deforestation as well. It's been increasingly less and less raining, not enough to grow crops in Jaukdam village, in which most of villagers are heavily dependent on agriculture for their livelihoods. The villagers who are aware of changing climate and there will be no enough rains any longer, they started climate adaptation mitigation activities. I have visited several rural areas in northwest and central Myanmar, and I have met local villagers who are leading climate adaptation and mitigation projects such as planting trees, generating electricity by biogas from livestock manure, and securing water from the river or neighboring villages. Many of the villagers leading climate action whom I met in Myanmar are young people. Last year, I met young activists working for protection of nature and environment in Inle Lake in central Myanmar. They have educated local people, including children, about why it is important for preserving nature and environment from development. They also were able to block the military from constructing a hotel by the Ilne Lake through collecting signatories and put pressure on Congress to withdraw the permission on the hotel construction. It is an amazing story. These young people are not paid for their work, rather they donate some money for their activities. I was very impressed with them because they broke the conventional ideas that people usually pay attention to the environment and nature only when they have money. The fact that young people are empowered and connected to each other is, I think, a significant sign of hope in responding to climate crisis. Actually, several Buddhist organizations have been involved in training and empowering these young activists and supporting their climate action. Let me take a couple of organizations for example. One is Kalyana Mitra Foundation, based in Yangon. It has provided many young people with training course on human rights, climate and ecology crisis, advocacy, fundraising, accounting, etc., and sent them back to their hometown. This group also provides supplementary training and sometimes sends consultants to have the graduated training implement project if they are needed. The trainees are working on climate and ecological issue in their hometown. The other group is Towards Organic Asia, based in Thailand. It has trained young farmers from Bhutan, Myanmar, Thailand, Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia every year. It is training them about organic farming and also how to set up social enterprises for marketing their products. Actually, organic farming is increasingly more and more important because it can contribute to reduction of emission from pesticides and chemical fertilizers. Now, in fact, most of young people want to live in urban areas to be office workers, and also their parents tell their children to go to college and not to be a farmer, even though more than 70% of the population work in agriculture for their livelihoods in developing countries. Considering the fact that food security might be most threatened by climate change, young organic farmers will be very important resources for food security and sustainable food production in the era of climate disruption. Both groups, Kalyana Mitta Foundation and Towards Organic Asia, have been supported by two Thai organizations, Split Education Movement and International Network of Engaged Buddhists, established by Thai Buddhist thinker Shulaksh Paraksa. ICE Network, my organization, is also working with these groups. So these Buddhist-based organizations are very active in responding to climate change and also helping the local communities and local young activists to respond to climate crisis.
Thank you, Junghee. We've just about time. Do you have about a minute more? 1 minute more?
1 minute more? Actually, I want to I should emphasize the role of Buddhist temple in Buddhist countries of Southeast Asian country. It's actually each village has temple, Buddhist temple. They are very supportive to local people's adaptation and mitigation project. Because Buddhist temple is very faster to recognize what happened to local community than others, and Buddhist temple cannot be sustained without local villages, as they and villages are interdependent to each other. So in this respect, Buddhist temple should play an important role to help local villages respond to climate crisis. Actually, I have met several monks working around to collect donations in Myanmar and other countries.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Junghee. That's actually very helpful to see the international and particularly the interreligious perspective of how we can be working together on this. Before I invite Steeven to start, just want to say welcome to all those joining us on Facebook Live. It's a nice, large international community we're being with here. And so it's more than just on this webinar, which is being recorded. But without further ado, Steeven, if you could please share with us your perspective from.
Thank you so much, Testa. Thank you, all organizers, for giving us this platform. As you are aware, Kenya has experienced also flood and the locusts, and this has really affected people, especially like the most vulnerable people, and especially also there are some important sectors of life which has been affected, like agriculture, livestock, health, housing. So the short videos that I'm going to show you it was recorded in Kenya, and I would like you to watch and see the testimony from people at the ground.
Kila kitu imefagiliwa kwa maji, sina kitu chochote isipokuwa watoto peke yake. Sina kitanda, sina nguo, sina chakula, sina chochote, sina vyombo, sina mattress, sina kitu ya kulalia yote. Sinaona vile mimi nimekuwa.
Already we are living in a complicated life, but now locust and COVID-19, they are now bringing new problems. Our priority as pastoralists is our livestock.
Imemaliza mfugo yangu na imemaliza tena ile shamba nililima. So nimebagiwa na mbuzi 4. So mimi nakaa tu peke yangu na watoto wangu tu namna hiyo. Ile sina kitu ya kununua na mbuzi, natarajia nikate makaa. Naenda kukata hii makaa. Ndio hiyo peke yake ndo nasafanya.
For them as community, when it came here, how they dealt with the locust invasion, as a community they all wake up and they were just creating noise and chasing the locusts. That's the only mechanism they had. But because these locusts, we don't know what is bringing, it's much better let the government spray, but let them be cautious of the kind of chemicals they are spraying.
Sai ng'ombe anakoa na ni akukufa tu. Mbuzi anakoa na ni akukufa tu. Na hakuna daktari.
Thank you for watching this, and now I can share my screen as I explain a bit. You've seen, that's just a short example. This has been happening in some different areas of Kenya, and also other countries also in Africa have experienced the same. But what is really touching is that when these floods happen, or when the locusts just came to different countries, especially in Kenya, is that, you know, in Africa, the majority of people are living just due to agriculture. That is only resource they have. Also, the culture of life, like this pastoralists, the livestock is their basic and the important thing that they have. So when now this is affected, you can see that also it goes to climate change. They start thinking of now cutting trees and selling charcoals and other things. But also this way of government to respond to it by spraying with these pesticides, you see the way it affects, because this, like the Maasais, you know, there are people who eat meat, also who use milk so much, and when these animals have taken this grass, having this pesticide, you find it affects their lives also. This also has come in time, in critical moment where the COVID-19 is there. There are some historical injustices. As you can see on this screen, this is another informal resettlement in Nairobi now, in Nairobi city, in one of slums in Nairobi. You can see these floods when they come. Already these people are struggling even to have water. You can see a long queue, people lining up to get water. But what they can get instead of clean water is some sewage left by the floodings after this flood has happened. So this is something also affecting the historical injustice that these people have been living in. Now you find we have many struggles, and you find like the government are focusing on COVID-19, but people are forgotten. Also due to those historical injustices, some are being kicked out of those to small houses. Then you find they have nowhere to go. So our issues in this area, many things are connected, and it's not easy to handle, but many stakeholders are coming together to do something. Give me the next slide. So we've been now working as Laudato Si Generation in Africa together with the Catholic University of Eastern Africa, Franciscans Africa through the Office of Justice and Peace and the others. We've been working on promoting Laudato Si so that people through the toward a new way, a new lifestyle, people can learn to live simply in a creative way. Also, we've been working on education for people to learn and they know that everything is connected, humanity, environment, everything. Like people should not be greedy, should think of also of next generation. Something also of ecological conversion is something which is still new to people that we are trying to teach, and we are happy that we are having some new Laudato Si animators trained by the Global Catholic Climate Movement. We are trying to work together so that people can have this culture of living Laudato Si. So teaching also the Trinity and the relationship between creature, still it is very important for people to know that connection, that Trinity, God, human being, and nature. Give me next slide. With all those teaching of ecological education and spirituality, now that is concretely what we've been having, like in the church, when people are having sacraments, like the first photo you can see that is a wedding. So we are having wedding tree planting, but this started with one campaign that we started in East Africa community, which is birthday tree planting campaign, where people, we are having a goal of restoring the Eden Garden by planting many fruits in our churches, in our communities, institutions, when people are celebrating their birthdays. So the motto of this campaign is planting trees and the cutting cake as a new tradition to celebrate our birthdays. So you can see even kids when they're having baptism, confirmation, all that. But also we are promoting young people, we are nurturing them to be able to speak at international level. You can see a student there where there are many flags in a UN conference where she's advocating, advocating for the future of young generation. So empowering young people is very, very key. Also having some cycles in these slums, like you see the photo at the left side down, where we are empowering communities in those informal resettlements so that people can take responsibility where they are. The organizing also big mobilization for like climate strike so that children can start doing global advocacy, also joining the global movements, global climate strike, but also something which is very important has a result of what Laudato Si Generation Africa is doing is this last picture down at right side, where in Burundi, like they are taking Laudato Si from home to home. People, they are hosting Laudato Si in home, and they do those small kitchen garden Laudato Si farm. Give me next slides. Right. So Laudato Si has come as a hope, like a hope in Africa, because like the church, we believe in the power of the church. You can imagine if like all churches, ecumenical, interfaith, if they come together, they take decision, they nurture young people to become the good leaders, leader of integrity, who will care about people and the planet. Because the problem we are having currently, especially in African countries, is that we have leaders who don't care, who do dirty business with the corporates, and you find even people are struggling to advocate, to make advocacy, to do their little things. You find the power of leaders is really dominating. So it's good that the church can work on nurturing new leaders who will be able to care for humanity and our Mother Earth. Also, to do lobbying in politics is something very important because we need, the church should work on preparing, mentoring, especially Catholic Church through the Catholic social teaching, so that we get advocates. We have people who can do lobbyings, who can lobby, like those leaders who come to church or find them in their offices. Then we can have some results, leaders who can make good policies. Also, children and the women are key, are at the center of all these things that we are talking about, Mother Earth. You know that like women are the ones in Africa who interact with water, with trees, like in just daily life. They are the ones, in fact, if they take action, things can change without problem. And also children, since they are the future of this world, and they've taken also the front line. Now we have hope in those children. But in Africa also, we should believe in what we have, like indigenous wisdom. We are having like some storytelling in the books, in the schools, like we've been told that in the past, animals used to speak. And that's, if a child hear that, then you feel immediately that you are connected to animals. If animals used to speak, some trees used to speak. So this also is very important to nurture our communities, to go back to roots and care for our common home. Give me next slide.
Steven, we need to be wrapping it up, okay? Okay, very good.
This is the last slide now, where we need now to believe in the power of youth. This is a recent lobbying that we did with the Catholic University of Eastern Africa, and then it joined the divestment movement. I end by encouraging young people, saying that it is possible. We need just to come together. We have power where we are. Thank you so much.
Steven, thank you so much. It's been wonderful to have this little view. I know it's very fast view of what's going on, but I appreciate it. It's very, very inspiring. Last but not least, Brother Jacek, they give us a kind of a little bit from the Americas perspective.
Okay, so I would like to begin with a short video clip from a young man who is from Guatemala, and he will be speaking about the nexus between migration and climate crisis.
Hola, mi nombre es Erlindo Morales. Soy originario de una comunidad en el oriente de Guatemala llamada el Monte Grande, una región conocida a nivel nacional como el Granero de Oriente, llamada de esta forma por ser una región muy productiva en granos como frijol, maíz, arroz y una diversidad de otros productos agrícolas. Actualmente, esa comunidad, toda la gente hemos emigrado de ella, hemos salido de la comunidad. Es más, el sector de la comunidad donde yo nací, ya no vive ninguna familia, todos hemos abandonado nuestros hogares, todos hemos salido de ahí y solo hay casas vacías. Esto se debe a que dejó de ser una zona altamente productiva debido a los destrozos que ha causado el cambio climático, ya que en esa región se ha manifestado un periodo de sequía dentro del periodo de invierno, del cual dependía la productividad de granos de estas familias, por lo cual estas familias dejaron de producir el mínimo, ni siquiera para poder subsistir, y tuvieron que salir de ahí. Actualmente, esa región, conocida como el corredor seco en Centroamérica, afecta a muchísimas familias, dejando una desolación en la producción de granos, y muchas familias ya no son capaces de producir sus propios alimentos. Es ahora cuando debemos de darnos cuenta del impacto que ocasiona el cambio climático en las regiones donde habitan nuestros pueblos indígenas, que son los más vulnerables a este fenómeno ambiental que nosotros los humanos hemos provocado, el cual yo invito a tomar acciones para poder llevar una nueva revolución que pueda marcar la diferencia con estas condiciones de clima, y estas familias pueden llevar a cabo un proceso de transición y adaptarse a nuevas condiciones de vida.
All right. as we heard Erlindo speaking about the impact of climate change on migration, the climate crisis now is emerging as a major driver of migration around the world, and in a particular way, I'd like to focus on Central America. According to the recent UN report, the loss of crops is the second largest factor for migration in Central America. According to very conservative estimates, this is from World Bank Group, if no action is taken by 2050, 17 million internal refugees in Latin America might become a fact. Migration to the United States from the countries of Northern Triangle, that is El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, has radically climbed in recent years, and compounding issues of poverty, unemployment, and violence. On what you see on the left is a region called the Dry Corridor. It is home to some 10 million people. It's an area susceptible to droughts, tropical storms, landslides, and flash floods. You can say that, well, there's a certain natural pattern to it, the Dry Corridor, but the thing is that the Dry Corridor now becomes as if on steroids, much more intense and prolonged. More than half of the residents in that area are subsistence farmers. At least 2 million of them have gone hungry in the last decade because of extreme weather, climate induced by climate change, and we have seen in some areas 40% less rainfall, and again forcing people to leave. Also in many areas of Guatemala where the climate crisis is particular and the droughts are particularly severe, they ended up migrating north. And in areas within the Dry Corridor, up to 80, sometimes 90% of beans and corn crops have failed. The malnutrition rate among the indigenous, the children, small children in the indigenous communities is the highest in Western Hemisphere, reaching I think it's about 65%, and also the issues around coffee production. The climate change have brought about huge losses, economical losses, and forcing people to migrate. The amount of land suitable for growing coffee in Central America could drop by more than 40% in the next 2 decades if it is not addressed. So again, in encyclical Laudato Si, Pope Francis makes a strong connection between environmental and social crisis being very closely linked, and we see that happening before our eyes. And the last thing on a sign of hope, just want to point it out how within churches and schools there is ongoing mobilization, raising awareness, not only to look at lifestyle changes, but harnessing the power, especially of young people, to push for political change. And here we have members of St. Francis International School in Silver Spring, Maryland, outside of DC, participating in the recent climate strike. So thank you all.
Thank you, Brother Jacek, for bringing us that view from the Americas as well, and particularly that important link between migration and the cause of migration of being climate change. We've been getting a few questions in, and I appreciate that. Continue to send your questions to the question and answer, please. But I'd like to start the questions with some we've kind of wrapping some together. I'd like each of the panelists to share very briefly, and you shared some in your presentations, but what is it that is giving you particular hope at this time? We had a lot of challenges faced before us, you know, between the fires in Australia, between the droughts that we're seeing and the lack of rainfall, both in Myanmar and in Africa, and then also causing migration. But what is it that gives you hope? And Steeven, would you like to start? I'm going to put you on the spot first.
Yes, let me start. Thank you so much for that question. Yeah, there is a great hope. I see it in two angles. First of all, that the church, and in an interfaith way, not only Catholic Church, but ecumenical and interfaith, having all church coming together, they've taken these responsibilities, like to preach and to really to contribute in promoting clean environments to protect our common home. The second hope that we have is that children are in front. They have understood that it is about their future. That's the key, because some of us, when we were 5 years, we did not know anything about environments to fight for clean environment, whatever. So that is already something important, because we hope through those children in the future we can have even good leaders who would care about people and the planet.
Thank you, Steeven. Junghee, do you have hope that you could add for us, please?
As I mentioned in my presentation, I think the number of the young people who were empowered and networked to each other are increasing. I have met many young activists in developing countries like, you know, Myanmar, Cambodia, Laos, and Thailand. There are many young Buddhists, young activists. They want to solve the climate crisis and work with grassroots people in grassroots levels. So that's very important thing that I have seen as a signs of hope.
Great.
And also many local groups, and especially Buddhism-based organization, they are supporting the young activists and young farmers, and have them be aware of what is the cause and drivers of climate crisis and what is the solution.
Great, thank you. Joe, how about you?
One of the great hopes I'm seeing is just in our parishes. We're seeing parishes pick up little actions that they could do. So all around our diocese here where I live, you can find parishes working on Laudato Si projects, and that changes the community around them. And it's also changed the mind of the Archbishop in this diocese as well. And so it is about communities slowly making changes, and those small changes step by step become big changes. So I think that's the big hope that I'm seeing, is Laudato Si actually being put in place.
Oh, thank you, Joe. Jacek, do you have anything to add?
Well, yes. So speaking from within the context of the United States, I'm very encouraged by this, the recent movement for, broad-based movement for racial justice, Black Lives Matter, and how it brings people together, how it kind of re-examines in a critical way the systemic injustice, and it shows the power of people that are being kind of mobilized to bring about a systemic change, political as well. And also I'm very much encouraged by our Franciscan Laudato Si Revolution. And again, I would like to encourage all the participants to go to the website and to check it out. This is www.laudatosirevolution.org.
We'll post that a little bit, so we'll post that later. So,
and how at the local level, as Franciscans, we're beginning to talk about and making move towards divestments, towards switching to renewable energy within a short period of time, so it gives me a lot of hope at the local level.
So a number of people that sent questions in even before this webinar started were revolving around what you kind of brought up, Brother Jacek, the idea of these interconnectivities we're seeing with racial justice, with the COVID-19. Have any of the other panelists, as you've looked at your own experiences, are you seeing this kind of different parts of movements coming together to work for this, like working on solutions and such? Are you seeing this kind of new groups coming in because of COVID-19, because of maybe the turn towards racial justice? Anyone want to just go with that? Joe?
Well, already in Australia, we tend to be a very multicultural society anyway, and we do a lot of work across different religions. Is probably the strongest way that we're actually making change here is by working in an interfaith way, and that involves people from all different cultures and backgrounds. So it is a sign of hope for me there.
Steeven or Junghee, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, yes. I believe this rise of people coming together for COVID-19, others for Black Lives Matter, others coming together for climate change, is something important which gives hope, as Father Jacek has mentioned, because all these three things, like, they have connection. First of all, they are like global, they are all global pandemic, because what's happening even in the US is happening in Africa in the same way. At the end of the day, it's not about colors. It is just the force, the power, the people of power kneeling on the people who are poor or who are weak. So we need now to have these voices rising from everywhere. Then we are working for a common matter. That is what is very important. It is a common matter and in a global way. So this will take us to what we call a just transition, where we can solve all these issues of injustice and the climate change, everything at the same time.
Junghee, do you have anything to add?
I'm very sorry that I was focused on answering the questions.
Oh, that's fine, that's fine. Very good. That's good. No problem. Well, there have been a number of questions, and unfortunately, the time goes by very fast. Our time has come to an end, but we want to leave you with some kind of next steps that have been talked about. So first and foremost, just so you know that this has been recorded, and we will send a recording out to all those who registered. And you can share this. This becomes an opportunity for you to use as a tool to work with your local groups, to connect internationally. It's been referred to before, and we'll put this also in the chat box, these email addresses or internet addresses. But there are three that we think that are really important to carry forward from here for more information. The first has been mentioned is Laudato Si Revolution. This is a year-long, at least a year, starting for a year, started with the 5th anniversary on May 24th, where we as the Franciscan Order, joining with the larger church and the larger world, really is in an interfaith way, as we heard, today are we looking, how do we look at things like energy transition? How do we look at our own lifestyle? How do we bring our prayer? And particularly, how do we do study? There will be a course this fall for the looking at kind of really how do we really apply Laudato Si into some of our work in our ministries. And so I really would hope and encourage you again to go to the laudatosirevolution.org, sign up to get updates, and really explore, because it's a lot of good effort has been put together to bring us a really valuable resource. That's been put together by the JPIC Office for the Order in Rome, which is the second link there. Again, there are incredible resources. There are study guides and other tools out there to help you with that. And then last but not least, we've talked about how the way some of the stuff gets worked together. Part of it becomes for us a way of looking at the question of linking together. And the Global Catholic Climate Movement has been one of the tools that's helped us to do that, is working across countries, across nations, to kind of influence foreign policy and all those issues. And so it becomes for us a tool that, again, to help us to connect. And last but not least, I think it's all of you who are people of action. You took the time to be here with us, to share and to kind of use these stories, hear these stories. A way of moving forward might be if you have a small group or even a large group in your parish or in your small youth group or community, or whoever you may end up getting together, your secular Franciscan community, joining together and watching this webinar together and reflecting upon what is this inviting you to do, and then maybe look to the Laudato Si Revolution or other tools that are out there. I want to take this time again to thank all of you for being a part of this with us. I would like to thank each of our panelists for being and taking the time to be with us. Steeven, Junghee, Joe, and Jacek, thank you so much for bringing your wisdom, for bringing your hope, for bringing your excitement about how this can be really, this is a revolution of love, a revolution of change. We also want to thank the JPIC office in Rome, who made this all possible for us. It's been a great opportunity to do this. Again, we'll try to answer the questions that we have and that we couldn't get to on this this conversation. And we'll begin sending this out, and it'll be posted for you all to be able to use and really spread this. Because the only way this is going to change, as we've heard, is as we continue to kind of light and ignite this together. So thank you all for your time, and thank you again to the panelists.
Thank you.
Peace and all good.
Peace and all good.
Thank you all.